So, Abby, thank you very much for joining us today on this call. It's a huge pleasure to have you on. I remember the first time I saw your, heard about Yumchop Foods, and that's because one of the research projects that you partnered on was led by my second PhD supervisor, so Professor Ram Ramanathan, and so that's how I remember the first time I saw him post something about Yumchop Foods. I think it was in the Interreg newsletter. And then I went on to read. I was like, wow, this is a very innovative product, so since then I've sort of kept an eye on Yumchop Foods up until when we met in person during a workshop in February of this year, and sort of got to sort of exchange ideas personally. So thank you very much. I do know how busy you must be, so we're very honored that you're able to make time to join us today. What we're going to do, it's a fireside chat, and how this differs to a podcast is we do have an audience present. Over time, as we move deeper into the conversation, it does, the audience would increase. But they have the opportunity to ask you questions, and really that's the key thing we're trying to encourage here for people starting businesses like yours that might be experiencing one or two different challenges, to come and ask entrepreneurs like you that are a bit more experienced how they've been able to navigate their way through those challenges. So you will get questions as we go, in addition to the questions that I have, and you're very welcome to answer them in whichever way you feel free to do. So I'm going to sort of give you the floor to introduce yourself a bit, then we'll go into our conversation. So Abby, over to you. Just wanted to ask a bit about Yumchop Foods in particular.
Okay, thank you so much, Winnie, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. It was a pleasure meeting you, and I'm glad that I can share my experience with other upcoming or existing entrepreneurs. Because really we do need to learn from one another. My name is Adefisan, and I'm the co-founder for Yumchop Foods. It's my other co-founder is my husband, who we've been married together for the past 25 years. With experience in the industry of over 18 to 20 years within the project management and program management and business analysis field, we're very passionate about food. So one thing that, really got us kicking together was really just our passion in the kitchen, and where we create a number of different flavors, some food, and we can spend hours in the kitchen just creating different foods, tasting it, critiquing it, and we just love food. We're not professional chef by background, no way. We're not cooks by background, we just love cooking. And what we decided to do 6 years ago was to decide to actually convert our passion into a business. So we decided, right, we love what we do. People come around to our home for every summer break. People just come around to us to host them so that they can just try our meals. And, many times people would ask us, wouldn't you like to set up a restaurant? Oh, wouldn't it be great? But that was never what we wanted to do. But we thought, maybe we can turn this passion into something. And we decided that, one of the ways that we're going to turn, our passion into a business was to set up a food manufacturing business. And so what does Yumchop Foods does? Yumchop Foods is what we do is we do a fusion of African flavors and African meals with meals from other cultures. And so what we're doing is, there's a massive gap here in the UK where there are no food from that space at all in the superstores. It's difficult to access, other than just accessing it in individual restaurants. So we wanted to be more than just a restaurant. We wanted to make our meals available and accessible into so many places nationally within UK. And so we decided to set up a manufacturing food where we produce ready meals. So they're frozen ready meals. One of the stories started with my husband. It was brought up by a mom that loved batch packing. So there was never wastage in the home, because whenever they cooked, they had to put everything in batches and freeze them up. And so that was what I started off with my husband. When we got together, we would always batch batch freeze everything. And, obviously, in this day and age of, increase in cost of goods, in the age of, high cost of living, wastage, sustainability, food wastage is a massive, massive issue and a massive problem across the globe, as you may know. So we decided that we were going to go down the route of making sure we produce frozen ready meals. And one of the key drivers for us was that, but also one of our ethoses was to ensure that we didn't have any preservatives, because many people think, oh, if you're going to be thinking about any frozen food, it's going to be full of preservatives and full of all of that nasties. We wanted to produce a clean product. And so we produce Yumchop Foods, which are flash frozen. Therefore, no added preservatives. They're naturally flash frozen without no additives or no preservatives. And that way, and not only that, we've been able to get our products to have a long shelf life of 18 months, which again, minimizes the rate of it wasting. So we went into that space 6 years ago, and so that's what we produce. One of the ways that we supply our meals is directly to consumers, but more one of the ways that we also do is through food service into the NHS and into the universities. We were successful at tendering for the NHS and for the university, and so we supply into a number of NHS through our innovative vending kiosk.
Okay, fantastic. I think you've answered quite a lot of my questions there already, but that's fine. But let's carry on. So I think what would be interesting for us to know, myself and people in the audience as well, is if we go back to the beginning, sort of, childhood and, your upbringing, were there any, if you go back, memory lane, do you think that there are things you can remember that sort of might have set you on the path to being an entrepreneur today? Because, I do understand that, it just came out from something that you and your sort of husband did enjoy, cooking and all that stuff, but not everyone has, the courage to sort of convert their passions or what they enjoy doing into real businesses. So whether, if we go back, memory lane, is there any sort of strong influence, maybe your parents or people that sort of were entrepreneurial, stuff like that? If you just want to just take us down memory lane, let's know a bit more.
So down memory lane, yes, Winnie, yes, there are entrepreneurial skills in my family. And my mom was she did run her own pub. So we were very much involved in that, and she was very entrepreneurial and always out there. She was creating loads of meals. I started to cook around the age of 12. And I used to, my mom would make us make different types of meals we loved get-togethers in our home. And, my mom, by the time I was 12, she got me into the kitchen. And whilst I found that a bit challenging then, I learned a lot of skills. And by the age of 15, I was thriving in cooking and just enjoying it. And I just loved being in the kitchen and creating stuff. Okay, so by that time I was really enjoying it, and I could see my mom thriving in her business, and the customer service, all that she was doing. So I guess I must have taken it from my mom.
Okay. So good. Because usually I think when I think about it, I always say this, when I think about myself as well, very similar. My mom was an entrepreneur as well. She had sort of a chain of fashion stores. So yes. And, when she did travel to buy stock for her stores, from a very early age, I think by 8, 9, I already knew how to take inventory of goods, how to write them down, make a list of them, the color, the size and all that. So, these things, we just never know how they influence us in life, what they are playing certain roles here and there. So it's great to know that. So now that, if we go back to starting off the business, so Yumchops has been running for 6 years now, which is quite a, which is a reasonable length of time. For the business to still be in existence for 6 years, there has to be something you're doing right. And that's, what I want to know, and what, people in the audience want to know. So if we begin to look at, I've been doing some research, spending a bit of time on Yumchop's website just to understand what the business model is like. And I've sort of looked at the revenue streams of Yumchop Foods, and I've seen that, there's the option to shop directly from the website. There's the meal chop. I think it's the meal club where, meal club, where, I can order sort of a large range of different meals and, get that sent to me. But there's also the option, I think this was what I noticed, it's a different website, the Yumchop, where, I can order for a large, like a cooler.
That's right.
Food. Yeah. Okay, cool. So when I think about these, and then there's the vending. The vending is really what is so cool about, when I think of, I was like, wow, I remember the first time, that's really what I picked up, the vending machine that I've never seen that kind of vending machine where you're able to, there's the frozen bit, and then you can take that and warm it up as well. I really found that quite fascinating. So it's these 4 core areas. Now, as you and your business partners set up these different models, how did you know? Because that's one of the challenges people have. They have this idea. It's now a case of how do we develop the different revenue streams to be able to get cash out of the business? And over time, I think Yumchop Foods has been able to do it very well. Because when I saw the Yumchop where you're able to buy the cooler, I was like, oh, wow, that's a really good idea. Because I know that, back at the University of Bedfordshire, where I've just completed my PhD, I was speaking to the student union, and she said that, during the Nigerian Independence Day, they would want to buy sort of bulk catering. So when I saw the Yumchop, I was like, oh, that's, this is, the kind of service that I think they'll need. So I think it's, as you and your partners have developed these streams, what was behind, how did you come up with the revenue streams? How did you do the research? How did you know, I know there'll be a lot of trial and error, but I'll just leave that to you to just tell us a bit more about developing revenue streams for the business, and how to know whether it will work or not.
That's a huge question.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to answer it in as much as I can. So like when we started off, like I said, we started off in our home, and as you do in the first year, you get your network, your family, your friends, your enemies, all of the people, your neighbors, you get them on board, and you're like, please buy from me, and for the first year, they're really nice to you, and they buy from you, and you're like, yeah, I've got a business going, But immediately we knew that there was more. We wanted to we had an idea of setting up a global business, at least starting off nationally within the UK. And we really wanted to think about, how best to be able to ensure that we have that distribution. And so we started off with the direct to home market. But then we immediately saw that, people, the average or the value or the length of time that people can be interested in your meal could be for between, 3 months or 6 months for some orders. But after 6 months, they want to move on to something else, so we already saw that, that channel on its own would be unsustainable. Unless you're constantly producing something new and exciting all the time, your NPD. And as an SME, you really want to manage that scope essentially really well. So we then thought about, how we could look at other streams, and we decided that, actually, I'll tell you a story. The story is, at the time, our nieces and nephews and some of my godchildren went to university. So when they went into universities, they know that auntie and uncle cooks really well. So I'd get calls in the middle of the night. Auntie, can you make us some meals, please? Until bring it down to uni. I'm not eating. I struggle. I can't cook. And so we got those calls regularly, and we're thinking, okay, what's going on here? So that kind of highlighted that there was a need at universities for our young, undergrads going into universities, trying to, obviously, they may have learned to cook from at home, but when you are living in halls of residence, I think the last thing you need is to be rustling things up in the kitchen. Some just don't have the knack to do it. So we immediately thought there might be a market here. So what we did was we conducted a market survey. So we had about 6 of them in different universities. And so what we did was we did a survey, a questionnaire survey to identify the need. And so the service, so I got them to be agents for us, basically, and they captured a lot of information, which was really rich information, identifying, the needs, identifying the kind of the habits of the undergrads, and identifying what they would like to pay for, their range of meals, how often they will buy meals from outside, and it became apparent, excuse me, that actually there was a need there where people were struggling and don't want to cook at the university or in the halls of residence. They really wanted something easy, convenient, so that they can focus on their studies. And we thought, this is brilliant. Why don't we look at supplying into universities? And so we started calling universities up to say, we'd like to supply our meals to you. And we were immediately advised that, oh, you can't supply directly to universities. You have to tender to supply to the universities. And so we had to go through a 9-month tender process to be able to achieve that. We were successful at the tender. It was a really rigorous 3-stage tender. But, we, with our experience of having managed projects, in our career, we were able to apply that into the food sector to be able to apply for the tender. And so we got access to universities to be able to supply into universities. Now, the desire for and the demand from universities started growing in 2019. And by December 2019, we were getting calls from a number of universities interested in having our concept. So by 2020, I think we had about 12 or so universities interested in our concept. We knew we had to scale up and everything. And that was when we moved into the factory. However, the pandemic happened in March, and we're talking about channels to the market, right? And different ways that we can reach our market. So we had focused initially on direct to homes, and we focused on universities, and that seemed to be a lucrative business at that time.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good. Yeah.
And that seemed to be a lucrative business at the time. However, come March 2020, there was a national, and I'm sure obviously every country had their own lockdown. And so we had the lockdown. And so all universities went into remote learning, which immediately meant that our university stream of income, or revenue potential income, just literally went to zilch. And immediately it became apparent to us that, right, our model of channel, we cannot put your eggs all in one basket. So whilst initially we started with the direct to homes, and we were now looking at we were now fulfilling the universities, and no matter how lucrative it was, we made our product sector specific. And so that was one major lesson that we learned as a business. Don't make your project, your business sector specific. You need to ensure that it is product specific, and to look for as many channels as possible in the event of such incidences, such as the pandemic. And so, we 2020 was a real massive lessons learned for us as a business, and we needed to pivot very quickly to ensure that we got the business to survive. And we've been really fortunate to be able to think, and I think that's the benefit of being an entrepreneur. You need to be dynamic. You need to be agile. You need to look at different ways of, being. You can't let a problem hold you back. You don't let that problem freeze you. You can either use that problem as an opportunity to learn and to look at the alternative ways. And I think what they say about being successful is about find there would always be an alternative. And whilst it was a really, really challenging time for us as a business, 2020, we decided to look at different channels, and that's how we identified the channels of the NHS, how we could supply to the NHS. We did a number of campaigns during the pandemic in supplying our meals freely to the NHS, because they were really doing a lot of hard work during that time. So whilst we did that, we decided, right, if we can supply our meals to the NHS, NHS, maybe we should look at if we can give free meals to the NHS, why don't we look at the opportunity of actually supplying them as a supplier? And then we knocked on the door and we were told, oh, you have to tender to become an NHS supplier. And there it was again, we had to do an NHS supply chain tender. 6 months, I think it was the tender, and we were successful at achieving that tender in 2021. So that's how our story began. We expanded to the NHS, started knocking on doors in the NHS. We also thought, we're not going to leave it at that. We're going to look at Transport for London as well. So we knocked on the door from that Transport for London to get access to be able to supply as a contractor to the National Transport for London. And then, the idea of Yumchop is also looking at a bigger market opportunity, within the community where people like to have other bulk meals for their engagements, for their parties, for their events. So we wanted to make sure that we captured all those different strategies in order to make sure that we maximized our channel to minimize the risk that we faced in 2020 and ensure that we had a number of strategies, business streams going, income streams rather.
Fantastic. Thank you. That was a very, very good answer, Abby, there. So I think what I picked up there is not to be sector specific, but to be product specific. So when you say product specific, do you want to shed a bit of light there in the sense that, okay, so now your the core Yumchops is, foods with an African twist. So that's the key differentiation here. There's an African twist in a sense. It's a bit more tasty, it's a bit more spicy, and that. So when you say, do you want to sort of elaborate on that and why you guys have sort of focused on that niche, that market?
Right. So product specific, what I was alluding to earlier was really to ensure that, you as a business, you think more about your product, the product that you are actually making. And whereas focusing on the sector and saying we're going to supply into one sector is a limiting factor where you're limited to that sector. And if that sector should go down, then you're going down as well. And which is what happened. I know that the pandemic affected a whole heap of people during the pandemic, a whole heap of organizations during the pandemic. So whether different sectors did suffer, but it was a massive eye opener to ensure that we looked at our products as an entity on its own to look at how can we get this product into as many spaces as possible. Now, you mentioned the product itself. It's a unique product where we are bringing the African products to the mainstream. Whilst there are many restaurants, many independent restaurants that are doing great, these are independent managed, singly managed restaurants. We wanted to expose the African flavors to the rest of the mainstream, and we thought that the best way to do it was to utilize the distribution that we were using via the innovative vending kiosk.
Okay, fantastic. Now, if we go to your vending kiosk, and like I sort of alluded to earlier, and I was quite fascinated by that, the vending kiosk that Yumchop Foods uses, just because you're able to get the food frozen and then warm it up. Now, why when you guys were sort of designing the vending kiosk, why did you think to integrate the microwave in there? Was that so that people could just have it ready for them to eat or stuff like that? If you just want to shed more light on that.
Okay, so we went specifically for the vending kiosk with the microwave integrated, specifically for a couple of reasons. One, we were looking to supply our meals into areas where meals would be needed 24/7. In addition to that, we also wanted to ensure we had a service that was self-service. So where we would not have the need for having to have resource-intensive service. So the going for the vending kiosk, it's a fully self-service vending kiosk where it's remotely managed. We have all the telemetry that comes to our laptop, our phones, that tells us in terms of stock management, etc. So it's a self-service kiosk, which means that we can place it in a university on its own without it being manned, to ensure that people can go to it and get a hot meal any time of the day, 24/7. And that was the whole point, that, having an integrated microwave would ensure that they are having the hot meal any time of the day.
Okay, fantastic, fantastic. And I do think, it's quite interesting, that is available. And especially as, these vending machines are in places where people are, doing things 24/7. So university campuses, there'll be people sort of maybe coming back from the library late at night or stuff like that. The NHS, the staffs, the nurses, the doctors, they're 24/7. So it does really make a lot of, sense, because and then it sort of reduces the burden for the customer, doesn't it? Because when they go to buy these meals, they know, okay, I don't have to think about where do I warm it up. It's, it's all there. So I just have to pay, wait a few minutes, and then I'll have a hot meal ready. So it does really just make it so easy, to think about buying and actually going there and buy. There's no waiting for it to get delivered. There's no, there's nothing. It's just pay. It gets warmed up and then you eat. So I do really appreciate the effort that Yumchop has taken to sort of make it that way.
Thank you, Winnie.
Yeah.
Just to add to that, that also, I mean, if people choose to want to buy it frozen and take it to their halls or take it to their office, that is also available, because on each package it's fully labeled. All of the heating up instructions is also available on the package, so they could also take it home or take it to their rooms or take it to their office, warm it up following the instructions on the package. So it's fully available to do that.
Fantastic. And also with the meal club that Yumchop offers, you're able to also order in bulk and get that sent to you, and you stock up your freezers and have that and warm it up whenever you want to. Now, I know that on your website it says that you're currently delivering, I think is it 15 miles of Milton Keynes? Yes. Okay. So does that mean that, say, if we want to order for the meal club or make any orders, do we have to be within that radius to be able to get it delivered to us?
No, you don't have to be within that radius to deliver to you. Within that radius, you get a free delivery. However, any orders outside of that 15 miles will get a delivery cost.
Okay. Good thing that you clarified. So I was a bit, a bit wondering,
Yeah.
So now let's go back to the conversation about, about the business. Now, I know that you've been running the business, the co-founders are yourself and your husband, Michael, and you've been running the business, for 6 years now. Now, what I usually, because I teach entrepreneurship as well at the master's level to students on a international business master's program, to students who are also studying their MBA. And I usually would tell them, hiring your family and friends is not always a good idea. You have to be careful. You have to, just because, from the research, there's always, when you work with family and friends, objectivity to an extent is hampered. In a sense, if you're just telling a normal colleague, what they've done wrong, you tell it to them quite objectively and without too much emotions attached. But when you're working with family and friends, you're a bit more, you're not as objective as you should be, just because you don't want to hurt their emotions. So I think what I'm driving at is, you guys have been running the business so far. You've been doing well. You're doing well. You're growing the business. You're sort of managing to open these new different revenue streams. How has it been running the business with your husband? Do you want to tell us so that other people that want to start family businesses can also have a good idea of how to manage it?
Okay. It's always interesting when you start off a business, because like you say, you know, in those early days, you do want to get your families and your friends to support you, and you can get them involved, and they help where they can. And what I would say is we've had some family and friends involved, and where we decided that going forward they're going to be working for us, in ensuring that you have the contracts in place and they clearly know what their roles are. What we've been fortunate with doing is we've been able to offer jobs to people that need it and also value the job, and they can see that there's clarity in their roles. Whilst they always say don't employ families, we have had a number of families involved, and we've been really quite, I guess maybe it's my experience in working with people and managing projects in the past. It's making sure we also have our human resource department who really helps us to make sure that we have all of the contracts cleared out and everyone knows their roles and understands, the implication and the impact they make in the business, and making sure they have a buy-in in the business as well, to see that they can see where the business is going. I think that's really essential if you're going to bring any families and friends, and whilst they may be really all wonderful in the early days and they feel like, oh, we want to support you, they've got to see the vision of the business. They've got to see that it's bigger. They've got to see where you're going. They need to understand that there's a vision here, and they need to ensure that they are capable to support you through that. And so in some cases, we've let some people go because they can't commit. But for those that have committed, there are contracts in place, there's clarity of roles, there's, so that we can ensure that we have objectivity, especially, as it's a food business, we have to be very firm and very careful, ensure that we protect our reputation as a business and make sure we deliver always on quality.
Yeah, good. Thank you for that. And the key thing there is really establishing clear contracts, clear, roles and responsibility, because a lot of the problem with the rise where the roles are not clear, the business is still very informal, and, and then it just looks like it's just, you bringing your family and friends and you guys are just tagging along. But like you said, sort of clearly making things clear and making it quite professional so that people do take you seriously, letting people know what the vision of the business is so they can really tie themselves to it. I think it's very helpful as well. So thanks for that. Now, I have a question from Tim. Tim says, what portion of Yumchop's revenues are from the vending machines? How do you find, so several questions here. How do you finance the vending machines? How much more growth do you foresee for the vending food sales? So quite a focus on the vending revenue stream.
Okay, so the first questions was around what's the proportion of the vending kiosk? So the proportion of the vending kiosk is about 70% in the business right now.
Oh.
And the second question was?
The second was, how do you finance the vending machine? So in a sense, I know that when we met in person, you said that they were manufactured in Europe, because I was thinking they might be coming from China, but you said that they're being manufactured from Europe. So I think what Tim is trying to understand is how are they financed in terms of the cost and just the funding of the.
So the way we've managed the cost is we set up a franchise where people can franchise into the vending.
Okay.
That's how we've done it.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's very.
We have a number of people that are franchisees, but we manage the whole process.
Oh, nice. Oh, good. So now that answers that. So how much growth do you foresee for the vending food sales?
We foresee significant amount of growth. As we speak, we already have a contract with the Transport for London to supply into 50 locations. And also within the NHS, just at the end of last year, there was a new NHS standard that was released, a new NHS guidance that the NHS would need to report to, which requires them to be able to offer 24/7 meals, hot meals, available to their staff. That is a national requirement now. And I believe that in itself is going to open up that market even more. And that's how we feel that there's going to be loads more opportunities out there. We live in a generation where people are techie, and self-service is one thing that's really taking off right now. And so we believe that is the way to go, and that the market is growing in that area, certainly.
Yeah, and I do agree, because, with the vending machine, there is a lot of room for scalability, because it's just a case of making sure that the vending machines are stocked up, and, the food there is always within the use by date, and just the logistics. But it is something, because it's a self-service, it's just needs to be there up and running. As long as it's, there is a lot of room for scalability there, and that's...
And not just that, Winnie, but when you think about it's a data-driven vending kiosk. I think the vending machines of the old days would require a staff going on site to see how much has been bought and to check the stock and all of that. Right now, what we have is what we call the telemetry data, where we get the data on, on all of the temperatures. If the temperature drops or increases, we can monitor that online remotely. We can set a threshold for our vending kiosk. So if we drop the threshold, if the stock drops to a certain level, we get an alert to say it's time to refill. So all of this is available through data. So, data-driven service, essentially.
Okay, fantastic. Wow, that's good. I do that's quite interesting to know, and it does really just make things a lot more easier to manage, doesn't it? So just moving on to the area of funding the business now, financing. This is really where my core expertise is, and when I think about the cost. So you said that, Yumchop manages to fund the vending machines using a franchise model, which is absolutely great. So it reduces the cost for, the business itself. Now, in terms of the operations, I can imagine, because when I listened to your presentation in February, I did see the kitchen set up. I know that it will cost a lot of money to set up that kind of workplace, the kitchen where the food comes from, but also the overheads, and again, one of the unique things about the food sector is it's food produce. The longevity is a problem, because food produce, vegetables, all that kind of stuff go off quite quickly. So it's also those kinds of costs that becomes a problem. So in a sense of, if we just look at the core operational cost here, and how you guys try to manage making sure that the vegetable and the raw produce and everything you get in is managed and used by within the right time, to make sure that you're not spending, or you're not losing too much money on those areas. Do you just want to say anything about that, Abby?
Yes, so you're quite right around the cost of produce and making and food longevity. And so one of the ways that we've managed that is, for most of our vegetables, we get our vegetables frozen. So frozen vegetables means that not only they retain their nutrients, but also the longevity is actually quite longer. Absolutely. And again, with our products are 18 months shelf life again, so it minimizes that waste. I guess what I would say is one of our most major part of the operational cost is our use of energy and use of electricity, because we are using, not only are we using a cold room, but we also use a facility that helps us to flash freeze our meals within a very short time space, to ensure that we lock in the quality, we lock in the texture of the meals, and make sure that all of that is covered within that flash freezing time. So that is one massive cost that we obviously have to manage quite significantly. And in fact, we're looking to speak to one of our advisory board members to look at ways of looking at alternative energy in ways to ensure that we can reduce that cost.
Yeah, and I can imagine, especially in these times where the energy costs are just rising, and it will be a huge chunk of the operational cost for the business. And the things why these kind of costs are very annoying is because they never go away. You see, if you don't use the energy, there's no other way to get it's just all. I think the other option, like you said, is to go for more sustainable and maybe a cheaper source of energy, but energy would always be needed. So I think that's one of the annoying things with fixed costs. They're always there. It's just how you try to manage it and look for alternatives to those costs. So just before we carry on, let's just so that we know that this is a fireside chat. If you have any questions for Abby, if you're in this field of in your food industry and you have any questions for Abby, please pop them into the chat. Also, we will be doing a giveaway very soon, and giveaways are two £30 Amazon vouchers to 2 lucky winners, and one person from the States would get $46 worth of snacks from Fully Charged allergy-friendly snacks. So if anyone here, I can see Karen Stringer from Tacoma. If any other person is from the US, if you could please put your name in the chat if you're based in the USA, so that we know, because the goodies is being sponsored by the William Factory Small Business Incubator in the States, and they're not able to deliver outside of the States. So we'd usually reserve those goodies for those based in the States, and our Amazon vouchers go to people outside of the USA. So please, if you're based in the States, could you put your name in the chat? I know Karen is based in the States. If any other person is, based in the States, please put your name in the comment or in the chat section. So we'll carry on, Abby. I'll be rounding up very soon. I think finally towards the end is funding the business. So if you're comfortable to just tell us, people might be wondering, starting a business, depending on the kind of business, especially with food, anything hospitality related, food really does require some form of capital, because you need to get the equipment, you need to make sure that the kitchen is up to standard so that when the inspectors come, they're able to approve it and all that kind of stuff. So people that are sort of looking to start their businesses, say they are, have some funds, that they want to use, but as they grow the business, do you just want to sort of share with us what forms of financing you think would be suitable for the food industry?
Okay, thanks, Winnie. Finance, I think it's an interesting conversation in the business, and that is always usually one of the barriers to business in terms of access to finance. And there are many statistics around being a female founder or being a BAME founder, Black ethnic minority founder, and having access to funds. So that has always been a challenge, and it's still very much a challenge. And so it's about maximizing and looking at what opportunities there are. For the food business, essentially, if you're looking at really setting up a business that you want to scale up and you want to be able to achieve that, it is quite capital intensive. Whilst you can start your business from home, unless it's a catering business, you can get away with starting that at home and managing that at home with your hygiene rating, what stars 1 to 5 here in the UK. However, if you want to go into food manufacturing, which is like the, bulk, ready meal, making sure you're using standard operating procedures, that is a whole different kettle of fish. That will not be sustainable in the home setting. And that was what we immediately discovered after 2 years, where we were managing everything within the house, and then we needed to scale up. And, we were told it can no longer be viable in the home setting. And therefore, looking for a facility with access to the right equipment, access to ensure it's food grade, that is also a major stumbling block, because there's not many of this available. And if they are available, they're really hard to find. And if you can find them, they're exceptionally expensive. So that leaves you with, you either look at, finding a place where you can convert into a cooking facility, which can be really expensive, or you pay the, huge rate that may be actually out of the city or out of the area that you're in. Here in the UK, we know the further north you go, the cheaper things are. But if you have a family, which for us, we have a family, young family, I have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old. So it's really difficult to just up and take your life out of where you're living and try and find a place. So finance is a major, major, major issue. We were fortunate because we had some investment that we could turn over to utilize that money towards the building the business. And also we've had to think out of the box, because getting loans from the bank when you are a startup, it's difficult. So that was really, really hard, difficult to come up to get one. But also we've been through a really challenging economic issue, economic collapse, if you like, as well as the pandemic has really changed the ball game. So everything is changed. Things are not as normal as they were maybe 6 years ago. So we now have a situation where the economy is not great. The pandemic has changed the landscape for businesses. And how do you navigate that? And how do you fund a food manufacturing business if that's the way you want to go? So we decided, also the channel that we've chosen, which is also the vending kiosk, is also quite capital intensive. However, and that was how we had to be creative in thinking about, right, how else can we fund this vending machines? And so that was how the idea of creating a franchise model was birthed.
Yeah, and that was really, really smart, because quite impressed, to hear that. That was a very good strategy, using the franchising to expand, because, with franchising, the cost is borne by the franchisor, by the franchisee, sorry. So that really reduces. All you have to do, in a sense, is make sure that the quality is up to date. I mean, when you look at big brands like McDonald's, almost 80% of the stores, or if not more, are franchisees. So it just really shifts a burden off you, and all you have to do is just manage branding and just the cooking and all that stuff. So it's good to hear. But I have Karen in the comments saying that she's quite surprised to see that Black or women-owned businesses in the UK have similar problems, which they do. I think it's not just the UK; it's everywhere. Female founders will struggle to raise finance compared to their male counterparts. It's very, very clear in the research. Now, what programs are there in the UK to address this issue? It has come to public light. I don't know, Abby, if you want to say anything here. Have you come across any programs specifically targeting female entrepreneurs to help them raise funds?
Well, there has been quite a number of accelerator programs for women and for BAME.
Sorry. Yeah.
We have had a few of the accelerator programs that open up to women entrepreneurs or women-led businesses, and we've also had the odd ones also for people from the Black ethnic minority. It's still very far and few between, but it's been acknowledged that this is a major issue, and in some cases you will have maybe grants available, small grants in the range of maybe £2,500 to £10,000, where you can apply for as a competition as a woman brand, especially if you're doing something innovative. You have some backing there, but it's still very much a challenge here in the UK, as well as running the business as a Black ethnic minority.
Good. So well, and you're absolutely correct there. Not a lot, and even with the grants there, grants are very competitive. It takes a bit of time to fill out. It's quite competitive. It's really like casting your net into a wide ocean. So it's not like a lot is being, but they're trying, but there's still room for improvement, I think we can say.
Yes, there's still very much room for improvement. I mean, we've been fortunate to be we've been on a number of accelerator programs. We've been on the NatWest Entrepreneur Accelerator, but then recently towards the end of last year, we were part of the Thrive program, which is part of Sainsbury's program to support Black ethnic minority food entrepreneurs with innovative food, and we were one of the 9 finalists that they have chosen to work with in order to enable our products to be shelved onto the superstore. So we're currently working with Sainsbury's right now to produce 4 of our African meals to get them on the shelves, and currently also going through a rebranding to do that. So that has been that is the first time ever that a superstore or one of the top 4 superstores would ever do that. Not only have they provided us with consultancy, they've also supported with some grants as well, which has been fantastic. So they help you through the journey. So, but again, it's just a drop in the ocean.
Yeah, cool. No, that's really impressive, and I really hope that goes well. That will be huge. That will be huge. For those not in the UK, Sainsbury's is sort of one of the key or one of the top grocery retailers here. So we'll be doing the spinner now. For those, we only have Karen. Karen is the only person I can see from the USA at the moment. So we'll just go straight to the spinners for the Amazon vouchers. I'll hand over. So R.E.A.L, all yours now. So R.E.A.L will be the one spinning and letting us who the lucky winners are today.
But if you're not, by definition, standards.
Sorry about this.
Came out on I've got cybersecurity insurance.
Hi everyone, good evening.
Hi.
Okay, so for the spinner, the Amazon vouchers. Congratulations, Taylor Wagner.
So to Taylor.
And Collins.
So Collins, okay. So R.E.A.L, the first person was who?
Taylor Wagner.
Okay, so Taylor Wagner, thank you. So Taylor Wagner, if you could please put your email in the chat as well as Collins. So Collins and Taylor, if you could put your emails in the chat, that would be great. And then I'll reach out to you to send out the Amazon voucher. So that's it. We're coming very close to the end of our time together today with the amazing Abby. So Abby, back to you, and just want to know, do you have any final thoughts on, anything you want to leave us with? I really wanted to ask you the question of the vision you have for Yumchop Foods in terms of, the next 5 years. Where do you see Yumchop Foods? I think that would be a nice way to finish.
Thanks, Winnie. I think we want to ensure that the African meals are highly distributed across the national UK, and so we want to see Yumchop Foods in at least minimum of the 3 superstores. We want to be distributing not only to the NHS, but we are also looking at the airlines as well, and making sure that within the space we are living in a very cosmopolitan, diverse society, and therefore our meals should be representative across different spaces. And so that is where we are looking to take Yumchop Foods into a national and then a global business.
If it's any, I see that happening. I see that happening because the business model works already. The vending machine is, like we've highlighted, something that is quite scalable. So it is extremely feasible. And like you said, Yumchop does have, to an extent, a first mover advantage into this market, scaling up, African food to a global market. So, I really do wish Yumchop Foods well.
Thank you.
But I think it's a very, very feasible vision. I don't see it, as long as, you guys stay on track. I don't see it as something that cannot be achieved. So I do wish you all
Thank
the
you.
best, Abby.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the
and-
belief in us. Thank you.
Yeah,
It's a rocky time to run a business with
I know. Yes,
economic challenges.
yes,
But
yes,
we
yes.
keep pushing along, and I think that is something as a business entrepreneurial person that you have to learn to overcome your challenges and look at the community of support.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So
Couldn't-
that would be
couldn't
my
say-
advice to the people on here, that, you know, don't ever walk alone. You're not an island. Find your community, find your tribe, and look for people that can support, mentors, advisory board, build that network, build that support, because we are living in very challenging times. And running a business, you have to have a lot of grit and courage to do so at any time, how much more the uncertain times and days that we are in.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much for those encouraging words, Abby. And yes, so thank you, Taylor. I've copied your email. Yes, thank you. Collins as well, I've copied your email. So I will be reaching out to you soon. So yeah, so thank you again, Abby. We've now come to the end of our conversation today. It's been recorded. Once it's ready and edited up, I'll send you a copy. But you know, I really enjoyed it, and it was really great to know more about Yumchop Foods and you know how it's been doing well. And I wish you all the best with the business.
Thank you so much, Winifred, and thank you to everyone and for those that are coming through. All right, all the best.
Okay then. Bye. Bye everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. We'll see you next month.